This is the Reviewing Network Live, a weekly stream of consciousness recording session where I sit back with you folks out there, talk about some of the big news stories from the past week, and some other things I found that might be of amusement to you out there. I think you might get a kick out of it. Now, these are more like audio podcasts and are much longer than my usual videos and are also for the most part unedited and will contain some foul language. So, if you're easily offended by that, I advise you to maybe step back a bit, maybe go somewhere else. But hey, if you're up to the challenge, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Thanks. And for the 81st time ever, we are live. So hello everybody and welcome to another exciting episode of the Reviewing Network Live on this second to last Sunday of the month of March 2025. The first Sunday of spring, which of course spring was on Friday. And, you know, they always say March comes in like a lion and goes out like a lamb. Definitely feeling like that right now. I don't know why I thought that. Just had to bring it up because, of course, March is here and, anyway, I'm just kind of rambling on right now, but that's the point of the show. You get to hear me ramble on the news stories of the world of entertainment and movies in general, and things that I find kind of cool to talk about. You hear me talk about that for the next couple of hours, and we start off as we usually do with the weekend box office, which was a very interesting box office indeed. Of course, the box office has been struggling as of late. Some could say that it's because of the studios themselves, but we'll delve into a couple of things we want to talk about here, because they both center around the two big new releases of the weekend, and one of them made it into the top 5, the other did not, and we'll get to, I think it's pretty safe to say which one you think made it out of did not make it into the top 5 in general, but we'll get to that as we go along here, but let's get right to it. Let's start off with the number 5 film, the number 1 film from last week, which was Novocaine, which opened to $8.7 million last weekend. And if it wasn't for that small budget, that would be seen as a gigantic bomb. But hey, it was a small budgeted movie, and it's not like it's gonna hurt the box office in general for it. But dropping from number 1 to number 5 is definitely not the way you want to go with it, per se. That's what happened with Novocaine, $3.8 million, dropping 57% from last week, bringing its 2-week total to $15.8 million, which, if you account the worldwide numbers, it has passed the $21 million mark worldwide. So it has made its budget back overall, so nobody's really complaining at Paramount. They would have hoped that this thing would have had traction going forward. I've heard it's a really good movie. It's got a lot of good reviews overall, so I don't know. Like, maybe it's again kind of like what we attributed to last week. Maybe a lesser marketing push for this movie really kind of hurt it in the long run, but then again, it got that big push during the Super Bowl, so I guess that's the only reason why it made it to number 1 last week. But it is what it is, and hey, like I said, it's gonna make its budget back. So, I mean, Paramount's not really complaining about this per se, but let's get to some movies where the people that should be spending a lot of money on this movie clearly are not. The number 4 movie, number 3 last week, is Mickey 17, which I finally got to see this week, and yeah, it's a good movie. It starts off great. I think the first hour of it is really good, and then it kind of falls off in the second half. That's what most people have been saying about it, and yeah, I can echo those sentiments as well. I thought the first half was really good. I thought the second half was where they were kind of losing me a little bit, but never to the point where I would say it's a bad movie overall. It is a relatively good film. Like I said in my review yesterday, I would say at a good matinee, it's definitely worth it. And this week, it lost several theaters, of course, because of the number 1 movie, but Mickey 17 brought in $3.9 million, bringing its 3-week total domestically to $40.2 million. And if you account the worldwide numbers, it's at $110 million worldwide. But still going to lose money for Warner Brothers. Supposedly, it's going to lose $75 to $80 million because, hey, that's just how Warner Brothers is rolling right now, and it's not helping you by putting the movie out on digital this week. They are literally putting this out on digital on Friday, 3 weeks after the movie comes out, when your film cost over $110 million to make. You keep that in there as long as you can, but nope, not Warner Brothers. No. We've got to go ahead and use our money not to promote our other movies, but for stupid reasons that we'll delve more into again once we get done with the box office here. But number 3 this week, Captain America Brave New World. It's held on in there, $4.1 million, bringing its 6-week total to $192.1 million. If you account worldwide numbers, it has crossed the $400 million mark this weekend, just barely. But, yeah, it needs to make about $425 million, I think, to break even. So I think it'll definitely get to that point at some point down the line. So definitely wanted better they probably wanted a whole lot better, but Disney did what they needed to do to get people in the seats, and people had gone out to see the film. It's had the legs to stay in there, and they're going to hope that the same thing happens with another one of their movies that we'll get to in a little bit here. But moving on to number 2, this was kind of the surprise of the weekend. I did not think this one was going to hold up well. But nevertheless, Steven Soderbergh's latest film, Black Bag, with Michael Fassbender and Cate Blanchett, held on to the number 2 spot just barely by about $300,000 over Captain America. It brought in $4.4 million this weekend, bringing its 2-week gross up to $14.8 million. If you account the worldwide numbers for this, $24.1 million worldwide. Not bad numbers overall, but then again, this is a $50 million movie, and yeah, they were kind of hoping that there was going to be a little bit of traction for this film going forward, but it does not look like it's going to make back that budget overall, even with the worldwide numbers. But nevertheless, I've heard a lot of really good things about this movie. This is definitely one of those films I really want to get to see. I have to see that one. I have to see Novocaine too. But let's go ahead and take on the number 1 movie of the week, which, hey, I'm proud of everybody. The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie, finally made it to the number 1 movie this weekend. We did it. We saved the Looney Tunes. $43 million this weekend. Okay, that's a complete lie. I wish I could say that, but that's not the case. But hey, nevertheless, the film is still doing very, very well. It's still bringing in audiences, and it is still doing pretty well considering its situation here. It's actually at number 7 this weekend, $1.8 million, $6.5 million in total so far after 2 weeks, but it has surpassed $8.7 million worldwide. It only cost $15 million to make, and it's apparently doing well enough that Ketchup Entertainment, the studio that bought this movie, is looking to buy Coyote versus Acme, and Warner Brothers apparently is shelving out the Looney Tunes. We'll delve into that as we get into the news stories later this week. So, yeah, what's going on with that movie is pretty good considering that there was little promotion for this film, and the fact that Warner Brothers dumped it over to another studio because they wanted nothing to do with it. But, hey, Warner Brothers should be happy. As the new Barry Levinson film, The Alto Knights, actually was the number 1 movie this weekend at $43 million. I can't even say that with a straight face, man. No, it is not The Alto Knights. We'll get to that in just a little bit here. Of course, the number 1 movie this weekend was, of course, Disney's Snow White. And really, I just love screwing with you people on this thing. But yeah, no real surprise whatsoever. Snow White, the number 1 movie this weekend, needed a lot of help to get it to a profitable success for Disney, and the film cost over $250 million to produce. Not off to a good start. $43 million domestically. If you count the worldwide grosses, $87.3 million worldwide. Yeah, definitely not the start this movie wanted to have. And when you count all the controversies that were going on with the film, the stuff that was going on behind the scenes and all that type of stuff, and yeah, that may have been attributed to it. The only thing that worked towards this film's favor is that there was a lack of family film competition out there, and there's going to be a lack of family film competition for at least a couple more weeks until we get the Minecraft movie, and even then, they're hoping that this could do the same thing that Mufasa the Lion King did back in Christmas time, when it started off very slowly at the box office, and it got beat out by Sonic the Hedgehog 3, but ended up still making over $250 million domestically because the movie just kept sticking around in the box office. And now it's currently out of the top 12, but it's leaving with $250 million overall. And kind of like with Mufasa the Lion King, this movie really wasn't that bad. In fact, most people that went to go see the film can tell you it was not a bad movie. You still got those people here and there that were saying that, yeah, it's not that good, but it was less of that this time around. And the people that actually went to see it, most of the people that I heard from it, they liked it. They thought it was actually okay. But I mean, that's my basic reaction to it. It was just an okay movie. It's funny because I said in my review I'm putting together a list of the rankings of the best and worst live action Disney animated classic remakes. This one probably is in the middle. Like I have it on my list at number 12 it's better than yeah, it's better than stuff like Alice in Wonderland and Dumbo and the 94 Jungle Book movie and Maleficent, but not as good as something like, Lady and the Tramp, The Little Mermaid, the two Lion King movies. That's why I have it kind of in the middle of my list here at number 12 of the 24 live-action Disney remakes that we've had since this started with the 94 Jungle Book movie. Of course, I'm also including 101 Dalmatians, the 96 one, the 2000 102 Dalmatians sequel, and of course, this does not include Lilo and Stitch, which that, of course, will be updated when I do the whole video and that movie comes out, which, regardless of what happens with Snow White, I think this Lilo and Stitch will do really, really well. Disney has been very smart in their marketing. They've kept the focus solely on Stitch. The marketing campaign has done a great job of mimicking the original film's marketing campaign. I mean, you saw the posters coming out of all the different movies that Stitch has basically interrupted with his antics. Snow White was one of them, Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, Aladdin. I mean, they're doing a very good job of keeping that same marketing tradition and mostly putting the focus on Stitch himself. I mean, with the trailer that just came out recently, we got Lilo involved in here, and I think it's going to do really, really well. I said it before. I think it's going to do better than Mission Impossible is. Even though Mission Impossible is we finally are starting to get the marketing campaign going for Mission Impossible because we're in the middle of March Madness. But again, we'll delve into the marketing campaigns of these movies in just a little bit here. But like I said, Lilo and Stitch I think is going to do very well regardless of what happens with Snow White. But Snow White was a movie that was heavily fraught with controversy, and some of it was legit. Some of them not so much. Mostly the ones that was BS was the stuff with Rachel Zegler, which, I mean, when even the people that are Trump supporters are saying that you're going too far, like hating on Rachel Zegler, I mean, that's really saying something. And believe it or not, this film actually did a whole lot better with people than you would have expected to. I mean, I found an article just as I was coming home today from an event I went to on Deadline Hollywood, and it's a very good article about how the new Snow White movie fared in both blue and red county cinemas, and I've got this right here, so let me just go ahead and kind of read this off to you. I'll go through some of the important stuff here you want to know about, but Snow White, this is from the article, Snow White per box office analytics core intelligence, ENTELLIGNENCE, minted 60% of her ticket sales and drew 56.5% of her total attendance, 3.1 million admissions, in theaters that reside in blue counties. Now, these figures come with an asterisk. It stands to reason that Snow White's business will be driven in blue counties simply because the majority of theaters in the U.S. reside in such zones as 53%, as determined by the 2024 election results, and generate 66.78% of overall movie ticket sales. Consider that liberal-leaning areas like LA, New York City, and Chicago are top-grossing box office markets. At the same time, family and animated movie ticket sales come from 63% blue counties and 37% red counties, while their attendance scenes from 60% blue counties to 40% red counties. And so and it leads to here. That means that Snow White with 40% of ticket sales and 43.5 admissions from red county-based cinemas over-indexed in such locations. Further supporting this, Snow White overperformed in Latino and Hispanic markets like Dallas, San Antonio, and Phoenix. The Mark Webb-directed, Mark Platt-produced feature musical pulled in an overall hefty 30% Latino-Hispanic crowd behind 43% Caucasian. So there you go. I mean, like, even though there were comments that Zegler gave out really could have been seen as something that could have hurt the film easily, like, it's the fact that people didn't really give a crap and went to the movie anyway. That should tell you something that, hey, they're really no matter who you are, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, you put a movie like this out there, people will go and see it, and especially since there's nothing else out there for them. And I think this is but then again, I was going to say this is kind of interesting, but then again, when you see where it's at, but it says here at the end of the article here, the highest grossing cinema for Snow White was in a red state, the AMC Disney Springs in Lake Buena Vista, Florida, which has collected $135,000 through yesterday. Again, Disney Springs, of course, that's going to make a lot of money there, but So yeah, I mean there is some positivity you could take from this movie per se, and yeah, the fact that it's not is $43 million is not a good start for this movie per se, but you never know. There's a lack of family film competition for the next couple of weeks after Minecraft comes out. That's the Minecraft and Snow White are the only two big kids family adventure films that people can go and see until we get to Lilo and Stitch in May. And I'm not including Thunderbolts in there because that's going to appeal to pretty much everybody, but it should give you an indication that there's a possibility that both Snow White and Minecraft can exist in the next couple of weeks and do pretty well overall. I mean, like I said with Snow White, I mean, like I said with Mufasa, that movie started off kind of slow, but then without the lack of a good family film to come in and really come and combat it, it did very well overall to go on and gross $250 million domestically. So there is an opportunity for Snow White to do very, very well in the next couple of weeks if the word of mouth is good. Now, the cinema score is a B+, which is not a promising sign going forward, especially when you consider that that's actually the lowest for a Disney live-action remake. But you never know. You really never know what happens here. You never know what kind of overall traction is going to help the film in general, help the film going forward. But yeah, we'll see what happens going forward here. But like I said, Mufasa the Lion King was in the same situation too. I think that ended up with a B actually, if I'm not mistaken. So, and that held on pretty well. So we'll see what happens here. Again, the fact that there's not a whole lot of big competition going forward in terms of in terms of who is coming to the theaters in general. Actually, I'm looking at right now. Mufasa the Lion King had A- on there, so not really that much. So definitely a major difference there, but Snow White could probably hang on in there and at least try to recuperate that money back in general, but it is going to end up being a loss for them at Disney. But and the hope is that maybe this is a sign for them to stop doing the live-action remakes, even though I think Lilo and Stitch is going to do very well. Moana's coming out next year, and they have all these other ones that they've been working on. Hercules, Robin Hood, the Aristocats. What was the other one that I saw that they were going to do? Tangled was one they just announced with the director of the Better Man and The Greatest Showman. Hopefully this is a sign that Disney looks at what they have here and it's just like, maybe we should go ahead and pump the brakes on these remakes until we can give the people something different and new. But then again, I'm not working at Disney right now, so that should. But I really do think that Snow White's box office overall, it's going to lead to Disney having a lot of questions about where they go here going forward with their live action remakes. But even though I think Lilo and Stitch is going to do very well. But we'll wait to see what happens as the time goes on here. The next couple weeks are going to be very interesting to see how this one pans out. But as I said before, the movie really is not that bad of a movie. It's just a run-of-the-mill live-action remake with things that worked in terms of changing the storyline and things that definitely did not work. But yeah, let's go ahead and talk about the other movie that came out this weekend that you may have not even heard about because you barely probably saw the marketing for this movie. And quite frankly, it kind of leads back into the topic of discussion we had last week on the show. So yeah, Robert De Niro's new film, The Alto Knights, directed by Barry Levinson, cost $45 million to make, didn't even make barely made it to $3 million. The total so far is $3.165 million, basically $3.2 million. If you count the worldwide numbers, $5 million worldwide. Gee, when you don't bother to even show a trailer on television and have the one trailer that you do have come out, then you take it off and then you put it back up again and then do nothing else afterwards for a film with an Academy Award winning director Barry Levinson, the writer who wrote Goodfellas, The Irishman, and Bugsy, Nicholas Pileggi, a film produced by Irwin Winkler, the man who produced several blockbusters in the day, including Best Picture winner Rocky, and a two-time Academy Award winner, and Robert De Niro playing dual roles, and you spent $45 million on this, common sense would tell you, gee, maybe I should go ahead and start marketing the movie more so people realize that this film is existing and coming out. But not old Warner Brothers. No. Even though this was completely a project by David Zaslav, one of the first movies he actually greenlit, and supposedly he did it solely because he's friends with the producer Irwin Winkler. I mean, that's literally what a story on Deadline Hollywood was saying when I was looking this up here about the movie. But to have a movie here where you spent a ton of money promoting this film, no, not even that. I take that back. When you spend a whole lot of money to make this movie because you're buddies with Erwin Winkler and you have all these big names here, common sense would tell you maybe you should go ahead and try to put this movie out there so people can go and see it. But no, you don't do any of that. You just let the film just sit there, release it, and hope that magical fairy dust will come on and people will realize, oh, this movie exists. Maybe I should go and see it. And the worst part about it is the movie is not getting bad word of mouth overall. I mean, it's got a B cinema score, but the reviews for it are not terrible. I mean, right now it's not the best either. 39% on Rotten Tomatoes, 46 out of 100. It's still better than a lot of the other gangster movies that Warner Brothers tried to put out there that did not do very well. Of course, Gangster Squad is one of the big examples of that. That was a terrible movie, but it just baffles me that they didn't even bother to try to sell this movie to people. I mean, it's amazing how much this studio just does not give a fuck about you, the viewer, or the movie lovers out there who have been in love with the studio for so many years. But it's so much so that once we saw David Zaslav come in and completely just dismantle whatever was left of the studio, starting with his reign, like, it's baffling. It is absolutely baffling that a studio can do this, and there are no consequences to it whatsoever. Like, it's amazing how many yes men are at Warner Brothers who don't even bother to think about what the studio is doing, but are just like, yeah, you do it, David. You're the best in this business. We trust you so much. And to make matters worse, they didn't even bother sending this out to the press either. I'm looking online. I'm looking on Twitter right now, and I found an interesting little tidbit from the movie critic of the New York Times, Alyssa Wilkinson, who says, "I know this is a controversial opinion, but I still think that this movie studio's policy of not sending invitations to press to screen their films is not a good one." So yeah, they didn't even this movie that was supposedly greenlit as a favor to his friend Erwin Winkler. David Zaslav apparently was not smart enough to send this movie out to the press to get some good word of mouth going. And you know, this is so ridiculous. This whole company has spent most of their time doing absolutely nothing but making films for nothing but tax write-offs, making films that they dump for no particular reason, and just the backlash that this company has had. One would think that someone would look at this and go like, maybe we should do something about this. But no, they just persevere like nothing happens in particular. But it's okay though, because they've already started promotions for their next project. The Paul Thomas Anderson, Leonardo DiCaprio movie. What's it called? See if I can find the name here. One Battle After Another, which just got pushed into the fall 2025 release date this week. They pushed back the Maggie Gyllenhaal movie The Bride and just started putting promotions on television for it, and also had a teaser for the trailer that comes out this week that is not but 12 hours after they moved that movie. So that should tell you where their priorities were. They don't even bother promoting their current stuff, but they're more focusing on films down the road that are supposed to be the big studio films that they believe in as part of David Zaslav's incredible new system that he's put together here. But then again, this movie does cost $140 million, this movie, One Battle After Another. So, yeah, you better start promoting this movie here, because you need this thing to make $300 million to even turn kind of a profit on this, which may end up hurting the film in the long run, because I really don't... as much as I like Paul Thomas Anderson, I think most people really like Paul Thomas Anderson, he's not a reliable draw, so this thing's got to be really damn good in order for it to make money at the box office in general. But it's baffling that the studio continues to keep pushing itself down these ridiculous paths. They're not even bothering to show the movies to these people. Like, you put all these movies out there, and then you either don't show them to people, you either pretend like they don't even exist, you dump them out there because you have no intention of ever releasing them. Remember the brilliant job they did of selling Clint Eastwood's last movie, Juror Number 2? Remember how that turned out? Most people didn't even know that movie came out, and you wouldn't have figured it out because Warner Brothers just dumped it out of theaters. Just dumped it. They didn't even do anything. They didn't bother putting it out there for people to know about it. And they didn't even release the box office reports because they wanted to save face for Eastwood by avoiding any negative box office headlines. Well, you failed in that by basically telling them, yeah, we're not going to bother releasing your movie widely, because who cares about what Clint Eastwood does anymore, even though this could be the very last thing he does as a director, because he is getting up there in age. And again, the word of mouth on this movie supposedly is really good. Apparently, Juror Number 2 was a very well-made film, and it was highly praised by a lot of critics. And even some notable filmmakers like Luca Guadagnino and Whit Stillman actually had it as their favorite film of the year. So you have a movie here highly praised by critics, and a movie that you could have easily tried to push for an Academy Awards run, and yet you don't do it. You don't do it because for stupid reasons that are beyond me. I mean, this is unbelievable malpractice from a major motion picture studio to have this much of a we don't give a fuck how we do it. We're going to run it our way, and we're just going to keep telling ourselves that we're doing it the right way, which you're not. The Lord of the Rings movie that came out last December, the movie that you were pushing so hard to get out there, not because you really believed in it, but because you wanted to make it solely for the purpose of basically keeping the rights away from MGM and other companies. So you made this movie that did not work on any way, shape, or form, box office-wise, critic-wise, lost a lot of money on it, but hey, we still kept those rights. That's all that matters to us. Companion, the movie that was getting a lot of high praise. It was really looking like a film that could have been on the same success rate as Barbarian, and it was also from the same people that made Barbarian. Came and went because you didn't bother pushing it out there to people. You spent all this money marketing the film, and yet nobody went to go see it because you didn't give it much of a push out there, and it just, like, it's baffling to me. But I mean, last week I said I talked about this whole thing about what's going on with the box office, and the problem is a lot of these studios really are not doing a good job of selling these movies. Apparently they heard me, because this past week they have started pushing a lot more movies, not just Warner Brothers, but everybody else. I mentioned before, Paramount's pushing Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, but then again, that's mostly because we've got the March Madness going on right now, the NCAA tournament, so I guess they're using that as the launching pad for the marketing campaign for that. As I mentioned, the Minecraft movie's been putting stuff out there now. Sinners, the Michael B. Jordan movie, they realize, oh shit, we've got this movie that we spent a lot of money on. We might as well go ahead and start promoting it. They're starting to promote it more on television now, which I'm glad to see that. I'm glad to see that they are at least aware that, hey, we spent a lot of money on this. We might as well go ahead and start promoting the hell out of it. So good to see that they're doing that. The Amateur is starting to get some promo pushes from Fox. So that's the good news. The good news is that apparently what I had to say about how the studios aren't bothering to really sell movies to people right now, especially with the films in the month of March, it looks like the studios are finally realizing, yeah, we've got these movies here. Let's go ahead and actually let people know that, hey, these movies are coming soon, so we might as well go ahead and start telling you about them. So, yeah, there's that. But I just can't get over the fact that Warner Brothers continues to they keep pretending that their business strategy is so good right now, and it's not. It doesn't help your studio when you send these movies out there. They don't make the money that you want them to do, and it doesn't matter how long they've been out there, if they're doing well or not. You send them to digital not even a month after the film comes out. Like Mickey 17 comes out this week. Companion made it to digital not but 3 weeks after it came out in theaters. You can't make any money if you're not promoting these movies out there and getting people to come to the seats it's baffling to me. But it's okay though, because Warner Brothers clearly has much more important intentions of things to promote. Like their stupid reality show with Jake and Logan Paul, because that's what Warner Brothers should really be about. Stupid reality shows with the most detestable people out there, and yeah, that's what they're spending their money on here. They don't really care. They don't really care about making movies anymore. I'm telling you, David Zaslav wants to turn Warner Brothers into the Discovery Channel. Fuck the 100 plus years of filmmaking from the studio. The plan for the studio simply is to just keep making these terrible reality shows and mold the Discovery Channel into Warner Brothers. Like Warner Brothers, screw what made Warner Brothers so important in the last 100 years. Is Bugs Bunny and Batman and all them. They need to have they're fine and all, but you know who really needs to join them? John and Kate plus 8. Here comes Honey Boo Boo. What's the other one? The Kids and Counting series, all that garbage on TLC and the Discovery Channel and all that type of stuff. Like 90 Day Fiancé. I'll never forget when David Zaslav officially took over and they had this big push of what Warner Brothers of the future is going to be like. And they said one of the most pivotal franchises we have going forward is the fact that, 90 Day Fiancé and Kids and Counting, that's where the real money is at. I'm just baffled. I'm just unbelievably baffled. I cannot believe this. And the fact that Warner Brothers continues to pretend like nothing is wrong here. It's unbelievable. And they were in the news again this week, and supposedly for something that, if we're being honest, needs to be done at this point. But we're going to get to that a little bit later on here. I've kind of already touched on the box office in general and what happened with the Alto Nights, but I kind of want to see it. I do want to see the film. I like Barry Levinson. I like Robert De Niro. I like Nicholas Pileggi, who wrote the script. There are a lot of things about this movie I do like overall. I think it could be a decent film overall. And so I'm definitely looking forward to checking it out, which, judging by the fact of how this movie played, I wouldn't be surprised if it hits digital before the month is over. But anyway, that's my thoughts on the whole situation with the Alto Nights. Just, why'd you even bother to produce this movie if you weren't even going to bother selling it to people, honestly? So with all that said, we've ended our long discussion on the box office, so let's get to some news stories this week. And there were a lot of big news stories this week. It was another busy week for entertainment in general here. And let's start off with next year's Academy Awards. So in the no shit Sherlock story of the week, Conan O'Brien, who hosted the Academy Awards earlier this month, is coming back to host the show next year on March 15, 2026. According to The Hollywood Reporter, the O'Brien-hosted Oscars generated many rave reviews, attracting a 5-year high in both total viewers, 19.69 million, and adults 18 to 49, and ranked as the number one primetime entertainment telecast in both total viewers and adults for the 2024-25 season. It also generated 104.2 million total social interactions, ranking it as the number one most socialized TV program season to date, outperforming both the Grammys and the Super Bowl for the first time. Returning to the show is our executive producers Raj Kapoor and Katie Milan, and producers Jeff Ross and Mike Sweeney. And as they said, we are thrilled to bring back Conan, Raj, Katie, Jeff, and Mike for the 98th Oscars, Academy CEO Bill Kramer and outgoing President Janet Yang said in the statement. This year, they produced a hugely entertaining and visually stunning show that celebrated our nominees in the global film community in the most beautiful and impactful way. Conan was the perfect host, skillfully guiding us through the events evening with humor, warmth, and reverence. It is an honor to be working with them again. And O'Brien, for his part, cracked, "The only reason I'm hosting the Oscars next year is that I want to hear Adrian Brody finish his speech," which, obviously, making fun of Adrian Brody's long-ass speech from the Oscars after winning for The Brutalist, but, that was really the right thing to do. Bringing back him, it was the Oscars are finally learning from past mistakes, it feels like, and, picking the right winners, picking the right host to do this. Conan O'Brien should have been doing this years ago, and the fact that they're now doing it now, and he still did a great job with the last show in particular, and now he's going to do it again. I'm really excited to see what he does with this, man. I can't wait to see this again next year. Great time overall. And supposedly there's going to be some changes to the Oscars of where they're going to be airing it next. Supposedly the deal with the Academy Awards comes to an end pretty soon over the next couple of years, and it's open season to where it could possibly go. It could end up on another network. It could end up in Netflix. Could end up anywhere, honestly. So ABC, who's had the Oscars now for 50-plus years, might not have it for too much longer. So that's definitely a story to keep a close ear on in the next couple of months and years. But anyway, Conan O'Brien coming back to the Oscars, that was the right thing that needed to be done. So let's move on to our next story then. So a while back, Daniel Craig actually left Luca Guadagnino's upcoming DC project Sergeant Rock. So where do they turn to now? Apparently they're turning to the Penguin for the role, as the story here from Deadline Hollywood says. It says here, after winning practically every single award out there for his turn in the Penguin, Colin Farrell is looking to get back in the business with DC. And that's to star in the title role of Luca Guadagnino's Sergeant Rock. Note this is a different part of the DC verse, where the Penguin attached to Matt Reeves is the Batman spear, whereas Sergeant Rock is part of DC boss James Gunn's and Peter Safran's Oversea. The two worlds shall never overlap. Scheduling for the film, which Farrell wants to do, we hear, has to be balanced with his busy fall that includes the second season of Apple TV Plus' Sugar and Edward Berger's movie, The Ballad of a Small Player. Farrell takes over for Daniel Craig, who was originally kicking the tires, to re-team with Guadagnino after they made Queer. Farrell will play Sergeant Franklin John Rock in the World War II set movie. Created by Robert Kanigher and Joe Kubert, the character first debuted in the 1959 DC issue Our Army at War as a World War II soldier who served in the infantry. The character gained steam in 1977 when he received his own comic book series that ran until July 1988. Rock's talents include shooting down German fighter planes with a single submachine gun and tossing grenades with great accuracy. When he's without a gun, he's a great street fighter and can survive gunshots. He's a calm guy with heart, but also has a combat antenna able to detect an incoming enemy siege. There was also a toy series in the 1980s for Sergeant Rock around the time G.I. Joe was soaring in comic books and on TV. The project marks a reteaming of the Guadagnino with his challengers and queer scribe Justin Kurski's. Among all the plates that Guadagnino has spinning, Sergeant Rock pretty much has the pole position over Lionsgate's American Psycho, which, let's just say, I hope that gets pushed back further and further, because that's a movie we just don't need, another American Psycho remake, but I digress. Guadagnino also has Amazon MGM Studios' Julia Roberts and Andrew Garfield thriller After the Hunt later this year on October 10th. Next up for DC Studios is Gunn's Superman on July 11th, and I don't think I need to say much more about that one. But, yeah, the Sergeant Rock movie with Daniel Craig. If you couldn't get Daniel Craig, Colin Farrell's not a bad choice overall. I think that is a really good alternative, and especially with what he did with the Penguin. I mean, the guy has a lot of acting range. I mean, there was that time early on in his career when he was, like, in every movie, and everyone was just kind of like, you know, why is Colin Farrell all over the place? And there was a time when he was literally in every movie. But most of the movies that he was in were pretty good. I mean, Daredevil, obviously the exception. But Phone Booth, Veronica Guerin was another one he was really good in. So, yeah, people do like Colin Farrell. And I like the fact that he is slowly but surely making a comeback overall. I thought he was really good in The Penguin, so yeah, naturally I'm really excited to see what he does with this. Hopefully this goes through, and be interesting to see what they can do with Sergeant Rock in general. I think there's a lot you can do there with a movie with him involved, so needless to say, yeah, that's definitely one I'm looking forward to. Moving on to our next story here. And that is that Darren Aronofsky has set up his next project, and it's a very intriguing one indeed, and one that I think plays very well to Darren Aronofsky's unique film styling, if you will. This comes from Variety, and it says here that Darren Aronofsky is circling Netflix's Cujo, a remake of Stephen King's horror novel about a bloodthirsty Saint Bernard. Cujo remains in early stages of development, and Darren Aronofsky has yet to have a creative meeting with Netflix, according to sources familiar with the project. Should the deal close, the film would mark Darren Aronofsky's first feature for streaming services. Although occasionally courted by Hollywood, he was an early contender to reboot Batman before Christopher Nolan took over. Aronofsky has mostly stayed true to his indie roots. The filmmaker has directed such films as psychological dramas Requiem for a Dream, Black Swan, and Mother, as well as The Whale. He's currently putting the finishing touches on Sony's Caught Stealing, a crime thriller with Austin Butler and Zoe Kravitz that opens in theaters in August. Roy Lee will produce the Cujo reboot, which was announced earlier in March and is yet to attract a new writer or actors. King's 1981 book about a mother and son who get trapped in their car while protecting themselves from a rabid dog was first adapted for the screen in 1983. That film, directed by Louis Teague and starring Dee Wallace, Daniel Hugh Kelly, and Danny Pinataro, earned $21 million worldwide against a $6 million budget. And they talk about Stephen King's other movies that have been made. I don't really need to say which ones are which because he's had a ton of them. But Darren Aronofsky directing a remake of Cujo just sounds like it fits right into where good Aronofsky should come from, honestly. I mean, Aronofsky has made movies that are so beautifully disturbing and terrifying to watch, like Requiem for a Dream, Black Swan, Mother. These are movies that have had some messed up imagery that will haunt your dreams and nightmares for the rest of your life. I mean, this feels like a match made in heaven, and it would be very interesting to see him taking on a bigger, a bigger, more, not really blockbuster, but a bigger franchise project. You got to also keep in mind that this is also the same man that was going to do the Wolverine until they dropped it, until he was no longer involved in that movie, and they basically they got rid of him, which would have been interesting to see what he would have done with the Wolverine, honestly. But yeah, like I said, this is a movie that could be very, very interesting with David Zaslav, Darren Aronofsky. I've got David Zaslav in the back of my head, but maybe it's because the next story is basically revolving around Warner Brothers again. But Darren Aronofsky, that's the one we want to talk about here. But Darren Aronofsky doing a Cujo movie just sounds like a match made in hell. You know how they always say a match made in heaven? This is a match made in hell, but in a good kind of way. This looks like an amazing, amazing idea of that should be made and hopefully will get made. But yeah, this is one I'm definitely curious about. Hopefully it goes through, and I hope Warner Brothers, Warner Brothers, oh my God. Hopefully Netflix gets this done is what I'm trying to say here. Apparently I'm so caught up on Warner Brothers right now, so let's just go ahead and wrap the story up here. Bottom line, the Cujo remake, I hope it turns out good. Looks like it could be very promising if Darren Aronofsky's on board. So with that said, let's go ahead and get to Warner Brothers, who is in the news again this week, but for maybe a good reason. So yeah, this may very well be the biggest news story of the entire week, and you know, whenever you're talking about Warner Brothers finally having the balls to hear another studio out and maybe picking up one of their movies that they're sitting on a shelf at the studio, you have to talk about it. And this was a big doozy of a story, which has gotten a whole lot more interesting in the last 24 hours, as I came to realize. But before we get to that part of the story, let's talk about the main focus of the story here, and that is that Warner Brothers is apparently negotiating a big sale of Coyote versus Acme, the movie that they said they're never going to sell to anybody. They're going to let it sit on the shelf because apparently Wile E. Coyote raped David Zaslav when he was a kid or something, or Bugs Bunny did, or something like that, because apparently he's got something bad against the Looney Tunes. But we'll delve more into that in just a second here. But this is a story from Deadline Hollywood, who first broke the story, and it says right here that Warner Brothers' shelved movie Coyote vs. Acme finally might have found a new home with the studio deep in sales negotiations, we can reveal. Gareth West's distributor-financier Ketchup Entertainment is negotiating an all-rights acquisition in the $50 million range for the animation live-action hybrid project. Ketchup last year rescued the same studios the day the Earth blew up, a Looney Tunes movie. The pack isn't finalized, and there's still a chance it doesn't make, but it's heading in the right direction. Should it get over the line, the film would get a theatrical release in 2026. The deal would mark a significant record outlay for Ketchup, whose previous releases have included the Michael Keaton-starred Goodrich, comic book reboot Hellboy the Crooked Man, Ben Affleck thriller Hypnotic, and Michelle Franco's Jessica Chastain drama Memory. Directed by David Green and written by May December scribe Sammy Birch, as well as DC Studio co-boss James Gunn and Jeremy Slater, Coyote vs. Acme is based on the Looney Tunes characters in the New Yorker humor article Coyote vs. Acme by Ian Frazier. Will Forte, John Cena, and Lana Condor star in the movie, which follows Wile E. Coyote, who, after Acme products failed him one too many times in his dog pursuit of the Roadrunner, decides to hire a billboard lawyer to sue the Acme Corporation. The case puts Wile E. and his lawyer, Will Forte, against the latter's intimidating former boss, John Cena, but the growing friendship between man and cartoon stokes their determination to win. Despite test screenings, the project became a high-profile casualty of Warner Brothers cost-cutting 2 years ago and has been sitting on the shelf for more than a year. The studio reportedly screened the movie to a string of buyers in early 2024 with a price tag of around $70 million, which is how much the film is said to have cost. Studio sources claimed to Deadline that they didn't get any offers at the time. Shelving the movie put noses out of joint with talks of potential tax write-down. Among those dismayed were Lego movie director Phil Lord, who tweeted at the time, Is it anti-competitive if one of the biggest movie studios in the world shuns the marketplace in order to use a tax loophole to write off an entire movie so they can more easily merge with one of the biggest movie studios in the world? Because it seems anti-competitive. The film star Forte called the move fucking bullshit, adding, I can't tell you possibly why the decision was made to not release it, but it makes my blood boil. It's not entirely clear at this stage what Warner Brothers' tax write-down was on Coyote vs. Acme, or whether there was one in the end. As part of a February 2024 earnings filing, Warner Brothers Discovery said it wrote off $115 million in content due to abandoning films in the third quarter of 2023. There was speculation that Coyote was included in the fire sale. It's also not clear just now whether the film's creatives or such as Green are across the current negotiations. Either way, the IP has remained present in the hearts of fans. Even this month, there remains some willingness to canvass out the Warner Brothers lot for the movie to be released. David Zaslav's Warner Brothers previously pulled the plug on high-profile picks such as Batgirl and the animated Scoob Holiday Hunt. In this instance, Ketchup has enacted a rescue operation. The same company also struck a all-rights deal last year for the similarly unwanted Warner Brothers project The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie. Ketchup released the film theatrically this past weekend, taking in $3.1 million off a strong screen cut of 2,827. Both The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie, and Coyote vs. Acme were intended for HBO Max, having been greenlit in December 2020 as a streaming release by the prior studio leadership. Ketchup negotiated the deal with The Day the Earth Blew Up with the WB-TV animation group. And they kind of reveal some of the details on that. But, yeah, bottom line, Coyote vs. Acme may, I want to specify may, have been saved. Because as soon as the story broke, everyone was making it seem like this was already done. Like, this has already happened. No. I just want to let people know that Coyote vs. Acme has not been sold yet. It could get, it's looking likely to get saved, but you never know. I mean, there was a lot of people when they were first putting out those negotiations 2 years ago that said, oh, this will get picked up in a heartbeat, but then Warner Brothers didn't sell it to people and didn't sell it because they wanted too much money. And even though there were some places out there that reportedly were more than willing to go ahead and take it, Warner Brothers didn't want to do that, and they just let it go to the shelf and just let it sit there until Ketchup Entertainment until Ketchup Entertainment wanted the animated Looney Tunes movie, which is doing a lot better than people were expecting for a film that was not given the big marketing push that it really needed to do. I mean, this is a pretty big deal, and Ketchup Entertainment's looking at what's happening with The Day the Earth Blew Up and thinks that they can do the same thing with Coyote vs. Acme, which I'm pulling for it. I really am pulling for this to finally get done. But it also leads into another element of the story here, because in the last 24 hours, there has been a new wrinkle to the leaf here, and that the fact that it's not only Coyote vs. Acme that might be sold, but supposedly Warner Brothers is looking to get rid of the Looney Tunes, period. So yeah, this was something that I found in an article not but a day ago, but apparently this was a story that was out on Thursday as I'm reading the article here. This is from it says it's from comingsoon.net, even though the page I'm on right now is from Yahoo Entertainment. So let me see if Coming Soon actually put this out here. And I did look, yeah, it's definitely from comingsoon.net, but the main one that everyone sees it from is from Yahoo Entertainment. But according to the title, it says, Warner Brothers reportedly is looking to sell the Looney Tunes brand after Coyote vs. Acme. And as the article says, Warner Brothers may now be looking to sell the entire Looney Tunes brand. Earlier this week, it was announced that Warner Brothers Discovery may finally be selling the distribution rights for Coyote vs. Acme to Ketchup Entertainment. The move comes after Warner Brothers decided to shelve the completed movie for a $30 million tax write-off rather than release it to the public. But according to Jeff Snyder's The Insider, Warner Brothers may be looking to rid themselves of the Looney Tunes entirely. Snyder says, I'm told that part of the reason Warner Brothers decided to sell Coyote vs. Acme to Ketchup rather than to take a tax credit a month before tax day, April 15th, is because the studios are trying to sell off Looney Tunes altogether. There has been no official comment on the matter from Warner Brothers at this time. However, it is worth noting that the original Looney Tunes animated shorts, which ran from 1930 to 1960, were recently taken off of Max. Which, yeah, that literally happened the Sunday after The Day the Earth Blew Up came out. Like, Warner Brothers was so pissed off at the fact that people went to go see The Day the Earth Blew Up, and it actually got good reviews, that as a revenge ploy by David Zaslav, they pulled off all the shorts from the official Warner Brothers streaming service. Does that make any sense to you people out there? Because it certainly does not with me. But luckily, Tubi picked up the rights to the shorts, so apparently on April 1st, April Fool's Day, they're going to start putting the shorts on there, which, good on Tubi, man. I mean, Tubi is also the company that saved a lot of the Hanna-Barbera stuff, the Flintstones, the Jetsons. I think Tom and Jerry's also on there, too, but Deadline reported that the show is, quote, no longer viewed as a priority as the streamer will prioritize adult and family programming. You know, like that stupid Jake Paul family series I was talking about earlier. Yeah, that's their priority over at Max now, so yeah, the bottom line of the storyline is that the Looney Tunes may no longer be a part of Warner Brothers in the future. And I know it sucks to think about a future without Warner Brothers and Looney Tunes, but at the same time, it needs to be done. They have to get away from somebody who clearly has a backlash or something that is against the Looney Tunes, because I have never seen somebody so hell-bent on forcing the Looney Tunes, on forcing these characters out of the limelight. It's amazing. Like, I really want to know what happened to David Zaslav and the Looney Tunes back in the day. Like, seriously, did a guy dressed up like Bugs Bunny kill your cat or something? Like, why are you so against the Looney Tunes in general? Like. I'm not gonna lie, I hate Taylor Swift, but I don't hate Taylor Swift enough that if I was running her company, the company where we sell her records, I would not sit there and just get rid of all of her records entirely. Like, I know that there's a market for her, and yeah, I might not like the music, but hey, it's bringing in the big bucks, so. And Looney Tunes is still a beloved property. Like, whenever it appears on television, like when Discovery Family had it on TV, people watched it. You know, when you watch the shows on Cartoon Network, whenever they play them on TV, they get big ratings. You know, just recently, with Warner Brothers doing this, everyone is now saying, hey, go out and buy these Looney Tunes DVDs and physical media, because guess what? Yeah, you're not going to be able to watch them on streaming anymore. There's a great image out there that someone took where, you know, people are laughing at the fact like, oh, DVDs. Oh, why would you do that? Streaming is the way to go. And then a story like this comes out where they say, Looney Tunes will no longer be available on Max. And all of a sudden it's just like, well, here's the reason why I own physical media, because I've got all these Looney Tunes movies right here and these Looney Tunes DVDs in my possession. So, yeah, this is why I always say streaming will never be a necessity, more of an accessory to physical media. Like, I am proud to have a physical media collection of all these different movies and shows, and I am never going to get rid of those no matter what happens. It's going to take me literally being no longer on this planet, me dying, for these DVDs and Blu-rays to be anywhere else but in my possession. But the bottom line here, but it does lead to a lot of interesting scenarios about where the Looney Tunes could go from here. Some people would believe that once they pick up Coyote versus Acme, Ketchup Entertainment may just take over the whole thing. And honestly, it'd be the smartest thing they could do, because, I mean, the Looney Tunes are still reliable draws here. I mean, it could pretty much go to anybody at this point. Like, you know, let's get the major studios involved in here too. We are literally in the possibility that we could live in a world where Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny are owned by the same company. It would not shock me at all if Disney sees this and takes the opportunity to basically say, okay, we'll throw our money into the ring here. Let's see what we can do. Let's see how far we can take this. Would you be willing to pay? Will you be willing to give us the money? To give the Looney Tunes to us. Like, I think that would be absolutely and 100% hilarious if that actually happens. Like, if we live in it's like, there's literally a possibility that Disney could own the Looney Tunes in the future. And I know that's very hard to believe at this point, but yeah, that's something that supposedly could very much happen at this rate here. But then again, it could also go to Universal. Remember Universal there was a time when Universal was really looking to bring the Looney Tunes into the theme parks. I mean, the whole idea of the cartoon area in Islands of Adventure was supposedly going to center around the Looney Tunes, but Warner Brothers didn't want to pay the rights to have them in there. So that's why we don't have them in there. And then we have the whole section dedicated to comic characters like Popeye and Heathcliff and, all these classic comic book characters. Paramount was talking for a long time about maybe picking up Coyote versus Acme when they were doing the initial bids on that. I mean, Paramount could possibly use that and maybe get them associated with Nickelodeon, but then again, Paramount is currently in a merger thing with Skydance. But then you also have the streaming services like Netflix and, Amazon Prime, Apple TV Plus. I mean, there's definitely a possibility of them going there. And I mean, in any other scenario, I would never let the Looney Tunes out of my sight if I was the head of Warner Brothers. But because it's David Zaslav, and apparently he has got such a butthurt attitude towards these characters, at this point it's just like, you know what? You might as well go ahead and give them to somebody else. Give them a better home than what you're doing right now, because it's clear you want nothing to do with the Looney Tunes characters per se. So if you're not going to do anything with them, somebody else will gladly take it off of you. I mean, it's like with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Like, we know Bob Nutting is never going to do anything to get this team to a national championship, to a world championship. So you know what? Sell it to somebody. Sell the team, Bob Nutting. Sell the team to somebody. Mark Cuban will buy it from you in a New York minute because he's from Pittsburgh and he's apparently been trying to buy the Pirates for years now. And I'd say, you know what? Fucking do it. But of course that will never happen. But this might actually happen with everything else here. It might happen. I hope it happens because I think anybody else would be a better home right now than Warner Brothers' its current state. But yeah, we could have a future where the Looney Tunes are no longer part of the Warner Brothers brand, and that's hard to believe, but sadly, that is just the way things have gone at this point, unfortunately. But that's something that needs to be done, apparently. So definitely a lot of things to keep up with in terms of the next couple of weeks and months. Whether or not A, Coyote vs. Acme gets picked up, and B, the Looney Tunes find a new home outside of Warner Brothers. So with that said, let us go ahead and move on to our next story here we have here. Disney is apparently making some animation news this week. They had their big annual shareholder meeting this week, and Disney CEO Bob Iger let it be known that there was a big sequel announced this week, a sequel that most people were not really asking for, but I mean, we'll take it, I guess. But this is from the Hollywood Reporter, and Disney and Pixar have officially announced that they are returning to the land of the dead for Coco 2. Disney CEO Bob Iger announced the follow-up film during the company's annual shareholder meeting this week. The sequel, which is early in the development process, is slated for a theatrical release in 2029. Plot details haven't been revealed. It's interesting when they announced this, it did say on the social media page for this that this was coming out in 2029. However, there have been other versions of the tweet that have basically taken that date out of there, so maybe it's not coming out in 2029. But then again, it's mostly because it's still very much early in development, but as he goes on to say, while the film is just in the initial stages, we know it will be filled with humor, heart, and adventure, and we can't wait to share more soon. Coco director Lee Unkrich is returning to direct with Adrian Molina and Mark Nielsen, a Pixar veteran known for Toy Story 4 and Inside Out 2, producing the film. The original 2017 film became a critical and commercial success, winning 2 Oscars, grossing over $800 million at the global box office. The story follows 12-year-old Miguel, who dreams of playing the guitar despite his family generations-old ban on music. On the Mexican holiday of Dia de los Muertos, he ventures to the land of the dead to uncover the real story of his ancestors. Coco scored Academy Awards for Best Animated Feature and Original Song for the heartfelt ballad Remember Me. Pixar's sweet spot in recent years has been its sequels to beloved properties such as 2024's Inside Out 2 and 2018's Incredibles 2. The follow-up to The Incredibles was the highest-grossing animated film in history at the time with $1.24 billion, until the follow-up to Inside Out overtook that benchmark with $1.66 billion last summer. Original stories like Elemental and spin-offs Lightyear, meanwhile, have struggled commercially compared to the studio's past animation triumphs. Pixar is currently working on follow-ups including Toy Story 5 and Incredibles 3, and new tales including Elio and Hoppers, which we got a trailer for Elio this week, which, I mean, it looks pretty good, but I don't know if it's going to be really something that's going to really shake anything up in terms of the box office in general, especially considering that you're opening it 1 week after How to Train Your Dragon, which the fact that they moved it away from... What the hell just happened there? I hit my hand on something, but anyway, with How to Train Your Dragon now officially on its own on June 13th, yeah, I just don't know if that's a smart move to move Elio away from that movie in general, but in fact, that you're opening up 1 week later after that, I think it's going to hurt that film in the long run, but we'll see what happens. But I'm hoping it's good. I'm hoping it's going to turn out to be pretty good. As far as Coco 2 goes, we really don't need a sequel to it, but then again, I mean, at this point, everything is going to have a sequel at some point. I mean, everything is basically going to get to that point where, a sequel is going to get made regardless of what happens, and this is not the only pointless sequel story we have this week, as we'll get to in just a little bit here, but the first Coco movie ended. It ended on a great note. It doesn't need another story to continue, and I just have that worry from, Moana 2, I think, really has turned me off on Disney animated sequels because of the fact that Moana 2 came out, and it was just such a garbage movie based off of, it's mostly from stuff that they took from the television series and made into a movie, and it just didn't work. It just did not work at all. I'm kind of hesitant now towards Disney animated sequels because of what happened with Moana 2, but Coco was a great film. I'm hoping that they do not make the same mistakes they made with Moana 2. Hopefully they do have a legitimately good story to work with here, and I'm hoping that it does turn out well. But I'm going into it with trepidations, so we'll see what happens on that front. But speaking of sequels that nobody was really asking for, here's one that really nobody was asking for, but screw you, we're going to do it anyway. Yeah, nobody is asking for this movie that I'm about to talk about here, but Meet the Parents 4 is apparently happening now. We talked about this back in December, and apparently my hope for them not to do this is going to be faded, but it's not going to be brought up whatsoever because they're doing it anyway. According to here's the article from Deadline Hollywood, momentum on the next installment in the Meet the Parents franchise is building, as sources tell Deadline that John Hamburg is set to direct the fourth film in the Universal series. As Deadline first reported, the original cast includes Robert De Niro, Ben Stiller, Terry Polo, and Blythe Danner are returning to star, with Hamburg, who had co-written the three other Meet the Parents movies, penning the script as well. Plot details are being kept inside the circle of trust. Jane Rosenthal and Robert De Niro will produce through Tribeca Productions. Jay Roach will produce through Delirious Media. Ben Stiller and John Lesher will produce through Red Hour Films. Hamburg will produce through Particulate Pictures. The first Meet the Parents film grossed more than $330 million at the global box office when it was released in 2000, becoming that year's seventh highest-grossing film globally. Its sequels, Meet the Fockers and Little Fockers, were also box office successes, and for all the franchises grossed $1.13 billion worldwide. So let's just go ahead and say the blatantly obvious here. Nobody was asking for a new Meet the Parents movie. Even with Little Fockers coming out, nobody cared about these characters anymore. What more needs to be done with these movies that needs to be put into a fourth film? The story ended. I mean, Ben Stiller's. It's like after three films, Robert De Niro and Ben Stiller still don't get along. Like, none of this makes any sense to do this. But actually, I take that back. The sense is that money. That's really all the reason why they're doing is money. Because as I said in the article, the three films that came before this grossed over $1 billion worldwide. That's the only thing that these studios look at. They don't look at how a film is done quality-wise or how the film, as a whole, we finished the story. It's done. Let's move on to something else. No. It's the money. That's all they care about is making money. And yeah, I know Ben Stiller has gone on to become a pretty good director with stuff and entertainer with stuff that he's done recently. I mean, I just finished Severance. Severance is incredible, man. Like, I love that show, man. It's my favorite show of the year so far. This season that they've done has been absolutely pitch perfect. John Turturro's performance in that episode, in the episode 4, is just, I mean, John Turturro is one of the best actors we have out there, man. Like, he should get an Emmy nomination for this. If Severance seriously does not win Emmys this year and have like a similar success to something like Succession or Breaking Bad or Mad Men, because it feels like this show should be on that same wavelength. And I really do think Severance should win several Emmys this year, including Outstanding Drama Series. If that doesn't happen, then there's clearly something wrong with the television industry. But, I mean, Ben Stiller is doing great stuff right now. He doesn't need to go back into the well with this movie. I mean, really, what more can they do with these movies? I mean, seriously, what more needs to be done except rehashing a story that's been done to death in the previous films? There's literally nothing else that needs to be done with these films. I just don't get it. I just don't get why we're heading back into this well, because they really do because they think that there's something there when there's not. There's just nothing there left. I mean, you get the idea. We don't need to do this anymore, but the fact that they're getting a director involved in here, it's going to happen regardless. But you know what? Maybe it can work out for the better. I mean, Little Fockers didn't work mostly because most of the people involved in that film had nothing to do with the previous films, and they basically made all the jokes gross out humor and just pointless subplots. The Jessica Alba subplot with him trying to seduce Ben Stiller's character was so stupid and so poorly done. Like, God, I'm getting bad memories of that movie. Like, if this movie is made to try to give us a better final installment of the series than that film does, then I'll take it. I would gladly accept that, but I just don't think we're going down that route again. This is just another bad example of a terrible, terrible sequel that just does not need to be made. And I hope, for the love of God, I hope that this thing just does not happen whatsoever. But considering the fact that they've got a director now and they're moving fast and furious on this one, they're going to do it. They're going to make it happen, and unfortunately, we all have to suffer for it. And I mean, everybody has to suffer for it, myself included. So there you go. That's my thoughts on Meet the Parents 4 that does not need to exist, but sadly, it looks like it's going to happen. So let's go ahead and move on to our next story that we have here. And that is the fact that apparently the Looney Tunes aren't the only ones that could find a new home pretty soon. This one's actually happening, and that's the Jason Bourne franchise is leaving Universal. Which is hard to believe, especially considering that they've been working on a new Bourne movie with the director Edward Berger, who just did Conclave. But this is from the Hollywood Reporter, and it says right here, Jason Bourne is emptying out his safe deposit box on the Universal lot. WME is shopping the rights to the Spy franchise and the rest of Robert Ludlum's library on behalf of the late author's estate. The goal is to find a new home for the franchise and make the Super Spy a more regular presence on screen. Bourne last appeared nearly a decade ago in Jason Bourne from Universal and producer Captivate Entertainment, which managed the film rights for the Ludlum estate. It is too early to say if longtime star Matt Damon would be involved in a new iteration. Skydance, Apple, and Netflix are said to have met with the estate for the rights. Universal, too, could potentially win the rights back if it made an attractive bid. Jason Bourne sprung from the mind of novelist Ludlum, who published The Bourne Identity in 1980. 2 decades later, star Damon and director Doug Liman introduced him to the big screen with the 2002 film The Bourne Identity. The film's coming a few years before Daniel Craig's grounded reinvention of James Bond with Casino Royale ushered in a new era of spy movies that favored realism rather than high-tech gadgets. It spawned 2 sequels based on Ludlum's books, The Bourne Ultimatum and The Bourne Supremacy. Universal extended the franchise with Jeremy Renner playing a different character in 2012's The Bourne Legacy, but it did not stick. Damon returned a few years later with Jason Bourne, which earned $415 million globally. The Bourne move comes as the land rush for IP intensifies, with fewer and fewer known properties up for grabs. Amazon in recent weeks took control of James Bond from producer Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson, which we actually have an update story on that, on who might be taking over that series coming up in just a little bit here. But in recent years, Universal has toyed with bringing Bourne back, with Conclave director Edward Berger hired in late 2023 to develop a new take, but it did not come to fruition fast enough. So there you go. I guess that version I was talking about apparently is no longer happening, which that was 2023 when that was announced? I thought that was last year. I guess not. November 2023 was when they first announced it, but yeah, a very, very interesting scenario going on with the Bourne series, and hopefully it does not go to somebody like Apple or Netflix or Apple, especially considering that it will not make any money for them because Apple has been losing money on what they've been doing apparently, which we'll get to that in just a second. But yeah, a very interesting scenario there, and the Bourne is not the only one that could be going to another studio, as I'll kind of just briefly touch on this one real quick, because this also came out on the same day. Excuse me. And that is the fact that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre rights are going up for sale as well. It said the day after it was revealed that WME was shopping the rights to Jason Bourne and the titles from the Robert Ludlum estate, comes word that the rights to the venerated horror franchise, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, are also available. And while there is a significant amount of interest from several parties, it's quite in the early of the process to determine who is involved and where it will land. But the participation of some bold-faced names, Texas favorite Golden Boy Glenn Powell, anyone, has some talking about a free-for-all. Legendary Pictures has held the rights to the property since 2017 and made a movie in 2022 that streamed on Netflix. A sequel never materialized despite hopes. The IP returned to the rights holders, Exurbia Films, which is run by Pat Cassidy, the original movie's co-screenwriter Kim Henkel and son Ian Henkel, who then turned to their representatives at boutique agency Verve. There is no bidding war as of yet since there is no package or take on the material, but there is plenty of interest, including players who are huddled on potential packages. One mention is a teaming of Powell, Strange Darling filmmaker J.T. Mulliner and producer Roy Lee. Another name mentioned has been It filmmaker Andy Muschietti. So yeah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is another property that the studios are looking to possibly get their hands on. I mean, as I said in there, not a whole lot of big properties left over to take over. I mean, the Looney Tunes, Jason Bourne, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There's been some other ones of noteworthiness too. Like I know Alvin and the Chipmunks went on sale a long time ago and I think they wanted like $300 million for the Bagdasarians did. I don't know if anybody ever bought it. So because we hadn't heard anything since they made that announcement, which I think was about, I can't remember what it was. I think it was 2022 when that was first made. Maybe? Let me see. Okay, it was 2021. They wanted $300 million, and there's not been anything since then. So I don't know if they actually sold the characters or not, or they brought it back. But yeah, we haven't heard anything from Alvin and the Chipmunks as of late. So I don't know if they actually got through with the sales and all that. But it's weird. Like there was like 15-year period when Alvin and the Chipmunks was a hot commodity when they were under Fox and Disney, but since then we haven't heard much about them. And I don't know. I don't know if they ever got purchased or not. But not a whole lot of franchises left to buy from a lot of people, apparently. So these are some big ones there. I'm going to be very curious to see where the Bourne series ends up with. Hopefully it's not Apple, because as I said, they're never going to make any money back, because Apple can't sell anything and can't make anything and become profitable, as we're going to talk about just a little bit here. But I mentioned James Bond had some big franchise news possibly, but about who's going to take over the company. And so I have this story here from the Hollywood Reporter. And that is that Amazon is in final talks to sign the James Bond franchise license to thrill to not one but two producers. Former studio head turned producer Amy Pascal and Harry Potter producer David Heyman are in talks to oversee and run the storied British spy franchise for Amazon, sources confirmed to the Hollywood Reporter. Amazon had no comment on the deal. The move comes as the tech retailer and streamer tries to close the deal to take over creative control from Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson, the producers whose family have been producing 007 movies since the 1960s. Bond was perhaps the key reason Amazon acquired MGM United Artists and its library for $8.4 billion in 2021. But Broccoli and Wilson, via their company Eon, retained a significant amount of control over Bond, including when to pull the Walther PPK trigger on the next movie. Thus, the company then reportedly paid upwards of an additional $1 billion earlier this year. It is unclear how far the talks are progressing, but sources say the two are far down the path. And while it's unclear what the structure of the Bond entity will be, sources also say that Pascal could be the lead producer executive. Amazon Studios Senior VP, Amazon Studio head Jennifer Salk, and head of film and streaming Courtney Valenti were all involved in the hunt for the overseers. Both Pascal and Heyman bring unique skill sets to the 007 world. Pascal was a longtime Colombian Sony Pictures head, becoming co-chairman of Sony Pictures Entertainment, which included oversight of the TV division. After being let go during the Sony hack scandal, she emerged as a forceful producer in her own right, producing Tom Holland's Spider-Man films and the award-winning Into the Spider-Verse animated movies, as well as dramas such as Greta Gerwig's adaptation of Little Women and Luca Guadagnino's Challengers, which was made by Amazon MGM. Heyman brings the British accent to the proceedings and will keep at least one of 007's lead actors across the pond and in touch with his Britannia origins. Heyman is best known for guiding the Harry Potter movie franchise across 8 successful movies. The post-Potter era has been less successful with its Fantastic Beasts movies. Heyman has also produced the acclaimed and very British Paddington movies and worked with Quentin Tarantino on the filmmaker's Oscar-winning Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Puck was the first to report Pascal and Heyman's involvement with Bond. So there you go. Two notable names in the producing chair here, possibly for James Bond in particular. I've been hearing also some rumblings of various people that could be involved. I think they were talking to Christopher Nolan about maybe coming into James Bond, and this might be their best opportunity to do just that. But other than that, though, not much more to delve in on that one there. Just a very interesting first bit of news on that front in terms of who's going to eventually take control of the Bond franchise going forward. And it's a very interesting scenario indeed, so definitely keep a close ear on that one for that. So, but with that said, let us go ahead and move on to our next story that we have here, and it involves the TV series American Dad. So you may have remembered that back in 2014, American Dad was on Fox for 9 seasons and then eventually moved over to TBS, where it was very successful on there. Ran for 11 seasons on there. It was one of the most successful shows. But because TBS and pretty much everything from Warner Brothers Television, again, Warner Brothers is the subject of a storyline this week, has been getting out of the original scripted territory. American Dad, it was the last scripted show that was still on both TBS and TNT that was making any kind of money for them and kept them around. But apparently, TBS has finally got done with American Dad, and apparently, American Dad was looking for a new home on Friday, and it supposedly is not going to be looking for too much longer, as it's looking like the original home of American Dad is coming back to bring American Dad back home. Deadline Hollywood has the story here, and that is that the American Dad is moving back to Fox, starting with its upcoming 20th season, marking the second McFarlane animated series to return to the network following a break after Family Guy did it 2 decades ago. The move of American Dad, which had been airing on TBS since 2014, had been in the works for months, allowing the 20th television animation-made series to remain in production, I hear. Like on TBS, where American Dad is coming off a string of 2-year renewals, the pickup by Fox is now being finalized is expected to be for multiple seasons. Reps for Fox and 20th Television Animation declined comment. American Dad's migration to Fox was fueled by the $1.5 billion deal extension Fox Entertainment and Hulu closed in November that keeps the broadcast network shows on the Disney streaming platform in season. As Deadline reported at the time, the new pact means that Fox's long-running animated shows The Simpsons, Family Guy, and Bob's Burgers would likely remain on the network. The trio will now be joined by American Dad. So essentially, all 4 of the original Fox animated shows on the lineup are coming back together in one block, which probably means the long-rumored possible 2 nights of animation domination is probably going to happen with The Great North and Grimsburg, Crapopolis, Universal Basic Guys, all those other animated shows they have. Most of them not that good, honestly. I think the best one of those shows easily is The Great North, but I digress. All 4 animated shows past seasons already stream on Hulu and sibling Disney+. Additionally, fellow former Fox animated show Futurama, which, like American Dad, moved to a cable network, Comedy Central, is now a Hulu original. American Dad's TBS run will come to an end with the upcoming Season 19 finale on March 24th, tomorrow pretty much. The network and Warner Bros. Discovery sibling Adult Swim will continue to carry the series' past episodes through 2030 as the exclusive linear home of American Dad's library, which currently is also airing on True TV. The upcoming American Dad finale officially closes a chapter for TBS as it's the last remaining scripted original the network has had. The process kicked off after the Warner Bros. Discovery merger, which was completed a couple months after American Dad's most recent 2-season renewal, back in 2021. Meanwhile, American Dad gives Fox another sturdy piece for its formidable adult animation block. The return is symbolic as American Dad was the first series to debut in the network's animation domination programming block when it was launched in 2005. American Dad paired with The Simpsons debuted after Fox's broadcast of the Super Bowl that year. American Dad centers on super patriotic CIA agent Stan Smith, voiced by McFarlane, and the misadventures of his unconventional family in Langley Falls, Virginia. Wendy Shaw plays Stan's blissfully unaware wife Francine. Rachel McFarlane portrays his left-wing activist daughter Haley. Scott Grimes plays Haley's geeky yet confident brother Steve. McFarlane also voices Roger, a sassy, sarcastic, and routinely inappropriate space alien, and D. Bradley Baker is Klaus, an attention-starved goldfish with the brain of a German Olympic skier. I don't really talk about American Dad all that much, but I love American Dad, man. I think it's even better than Family Guy is, and has been one of the more consistently good shows that Fox has ever produced. I mean, there's Bob's Burgers that has been consistently good all the way through, and American Dad, and King of the Hill and Futurama too. Like, they've had some good shows that have been consistently good all the way through their runs. Like, The Simpsons and Family Guy have those brief flashes where the show is not as good as it should be, but then they come back swinging. Simpsons is currently in that state right now. Family Guy had a stretch like that for a little bit, not too long ago. But American Dad has been one of those rare, consistent, good shows that they have done. And, I mean, they have not lost a beat since they moved over to TBS. I mean, they have done a fantastic job of keeping that show funny. They have not gone straight past what the individual intention of the show was. It's been a funny show for so many years, and this show still continues to be very entertaining indeed, and the fact that it's coming back to Fox is a pretty interesting and exciting thing to happen. So, yeah, I'm definitely really excited to see how far this goes here. And like I said, it could open the door for that potential second night of animation domination they've been promising to do for the longest period of time, because they have so many animated shows on that lineup now. Like, it'll be very interesting to see how that pans out here. One hopes that would happen, but we'll see what happens. But it looks like American Dad is making its return to Fox pretty soon, so that's very interesting and exciting news. So, all right, next story. And that is the fact that Apple is losing $1 billion a year on its streaming service, which really should not come as a surprise to anybody for obvious reasons, but let's read the story here. Variety officially has put the story out here that says Apple's video streaming business is still firmly in the red, according to a new report. The Apple TV Plus premium subscription service is losing more than $1 billion per year, according to an anonymously sourced report by The Information published Thursday. The tech giant is spending around $4.5 billion on content annually, down from $5 billion in past years, according to the article. Apple TV Plus, which features virtually an all-original lineup, has about 45 million subscribers per the report. Reps for Apple did not respond to a request for comment. Of course, $1 billion in annual losses are practically a rounding error for Apple in the context of its overall business, which is mostly fueled by iPhone sales. Then why the hell did you get involved in the streaming service business then? Apple generated $391 billion in revenue and posted a net profit of $93.7 billion for its fiscal year ending in September 2024. The company did not disclose financial or subscriber metrics for Apple TV+. The streaming business is part of Apple Services segment, which includes Apple Music, the App Store, and other lines of business. Revenue in the service segments hit $26.3 billion for the year-end 2024 quarter, up 14% year over year. Shows on Apple TV Plus include Emmy winners Ted Lasso, starring Jason Sudeikis, which was recently renewed for Season 4, and The Morning Show, as well as Severance, Silo, Shrinking, Bad Sisters, Slow Horses, Disclaimer, Presumed Innocent, Hijack, Loot, Palm Royale, and Masters on the Air. Movies on the service include Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon and the Oscar-winning Coda, as well as Fly Me to the Moon, starring Scarlett Johansson and Channing Tatum, The Family Plan, starring Mark Wahlberg and Michelle Monaghan, action comedy The Wolf, starring George Clooney and Brad Pitt, and The Instigator, starring Matt Damon and Casey Affleck. Apple TV Plus is also the home of Friday Night Baseball, a weekly MLB doubleheader available in the U.S. and other countries with no local broadcast restrictions. Apple TV Plus in the U.S. costs $9.99 a month or $99.99 a year. Among the major subscription streaming services, it's the only one that does not include a reduced-priced ad support tier. Apple TV Plus, which launched in November 2019, is available in more than 100 countries and regions. Well, I think your first mistake there is that you don't have a reduced-price ad-supported tier like the other streaming services do. Like Netflix has one, Hulu has one, Disney Plus, Max, Paramount Plus. They all have those services. They have options for people for them, and Apple TV Plus doesn't have that. But the other problem here is that, maybe if you don't spend all that money on those movies that you clearly know are never going to make a profit for you, maybe you should think about your strategy here a little bit, because Apple TV Plus is notoriously known for spending high budgets on these movies, and most of them don't even make it to theaters. So how the hell are you supposed to make your money back on these films if they're never going to make a profit for you if you're spending $200 million on them? Maybe that's something they ought to think about doing in the near future here. Maybe expanding that out to other studios in general. Maybe getting the films out to theaters so you can at least make a profit off of them. I'm not even joking. Killers of the Flower Moon. How much did that make? $158 million. That thing cost $215 million to make. Napoleon. Napoleon cost $200 million to make. Just barely got past that budget with $221 million. Argylle. Argylle cost $200 million to make, brought in $96 million total worldwide. Oops. Fly Me to the Moon. Fly Me to the Moon was not a big hit, even though that cost $100 million to make, only brought in $42 million worldwide. Wolves, the movie that you spent all that money on, didn't even make any money because you didn't put it in theaters, even though you had a big marketing push going for it, and you pulled it out of theaters after the Venice Film Festival. They literally pulled the film out of a theatrical run when they were already starting to put the promotions together for it. So that's another movie that didn't make any money. That was a movie that they were supposed to make a franchise out of. They were going to do a sequel, and then when the movie didn't do well, the sequel didn't go anywhere, and it's just like, how is a company supposed to make money off of something like this if you're not selling the films to the public, first of all, and spending all this money on movies that you're never going to make a profit on? This isn't the smartest business strategy out there. And some people can make the argument, well, why do they even need this? They can make all their money that they need to on iPhones and iPads and all these technical things they have, the computers and all that. Well, if you're going to do that, then why the hell are we even bothering to go into the world of streaming? It's pretty clear that streaming services were at the peak when COVID happened. Everybody couldn't go anywhere, so, okay, let's sit at home and watch a streaming service. You can go to Disney Plus, Netflix. They're all suffering right now, but that ship has sailed, man. We're 5 years to the day when COVID first started. We were still in that rut for the last couple months, and nobody can really go outside except the people who had to go to work, myself included. But yeah, we're way past that point now. I mean, everything is open now. We don't need we don't need a streaming service to live our lives and all that type of stuff. That's a problem with a lot of people need to take notice of here, and the fact that nobody is looking at this and really thinking about what they're doing. That's bad business. That's a bad business practice, and somebody really needs to come into these places and tell them that, hey, you gotta get your shit straightened out here, because this is not helping your business whatsoever by continuing to do this, bud. Again, that's my personal thinking behind it. But then again, I'm not the head of a major streaming service, and even if I did start a streaming service, honestly, I would wait until I know I have the money to have these big projects in here. Like, if that day ever comes when I do put together a streaming service and I do put the money into this stuff here, I want to make sure that I'm making some money back here or something like that. But unfortunately, fortunately for most of you people out there, that day will probably never come because I'm never going to have billions and billions of dollars to put a streaming service together and put content out there. But I mean, then again, you never know. Maybe it could happen, but more than likely it's not. So anyway, that's that story, and I believe we have one more story to get to here in terms of news stories, and then one more thing I found that was kind of interesting here. So let's get to that last news story that I have. And that is that the last real relic of the Siskel and Ebert, even Roeper era is officially calling it quits from his former job. Richard Roeper is leaving the Chicago Sun-Times after 37 years with the paper. This is a story that comes from the Hollywood Reporter, and it says right here, longtime film critic Richard Roeper is leaving the Chicago Sun-Times after a 37-year career. The influential reviewer is taking a buyout from the Sun-Times, from whom he has written as a contributor since 1987. Roeper, a Chicago native, is among 30 people who have taken a buyout from the iconic newspaper this week, including reporters and editors, as the Sun-Times, along with the NPR radio station WBEZ, now operate with a non-profit media model. Roeper co-hosted the television series At the Movies with Roger Ebert from 2000 to 2008, which technically was Ebert and Roeper, but succeeding Gene Siskel after his death. He announced his final day with the Sun-Times will be, well, it's already happened, this past Friday, March 21st, but he won't be putting his pen down anytime soon. As he says in a statement, I've decided to accept a buyout from the Sun-Times. I'm excited for the next chapter of my career, and I have no plans on retiring or even slowing down. I will continue to review films and TV shows every Friday on Windy City Weekend on ABC 7 Chicago, and I'll keep recording new episodes of the Richard Roeper Show podcast every week. I also intend to continue writing reviews regularly. See you at the movies, he added. The Sun-Times in 2018 reinstated Roeper after a critic following a suspension for allegedly buying followers on Twitter. He was among several prominent journalists, sports stars, politicians, and celebrities who, according to a New York Times reporter, paid to increase the Twitter followers with fake accounts. That's from the Hollywood. That's the end of the Hollywood Reporter article. That's not me saying that. So, why'd they even put that in there? But this has nothing to do with the actual. That really does not have a whole lot to do with the actual story itself. But yeah, overall, this big story is that the big story, of course, is that Richard Roeper is leaving the Chicago Sun-Times, which is where a lot of people first knew about him. I mean, he was the guy that came in for Gene Siskel. He was the official replacement for Gene Siskel when he passed away in 1999, and when they had all those people that were coming in to basically fill that void. I mean, it's weird. There was a lot of different people that came in whenever they were looking for the next host for Roger Ebert's eventual successor. You know, they had people like they had Harry Knowles from 8 and Cool News doing it at one point. There was it's very interesting. Like, it was a very bizarre period when you look back on those old shows that they had back then. They had all these different people coming in here. Like, they had legitimate film critics like, Janet Maslin, Elvis Mitchell, Tom Shales, Joel Siegel. But then you have people like, Harry Knowles, Peter Bogdanovich, Martin Scorsese was even on the show for a little bit, doing movie reviews, and then David Anson from Newsweek. They had all these different guys in here, and then they brought in Richard Roeper to take over the role, and it worked very well. That was my first real exposure to the show, was during the Ebert and Roeper era. I didn't watch the Gene Siskel show, the Siskel and Ebert era when it was on TV, because I was still too young for it, but it was mostly because of Ebert and Roeper that I did find those older reviews from Siskel and Ebert, and that really kind of led to my love of the movies in general. So I really have a lot to thank for Richard Roeper, because if it wasn't for him and Roger, I probably would have not even thought about maybe going into film reviewing as a whole. But yeah, it's a very, very it was a very, very interesting period for me to discover that show, and 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 I would watch every weekend on the Ebert and Roeper show, and and he's still working today. Richard Roeper is still very much is doing what he does best, and he's still doing a pretty good job at it. He can be very, very entertaining to watch and listen to. I listen to the podcast every time, and it's a really, really good feeling to know that he's still doing what he does best. And I did like the fact that Richard Roeper came out swinging when he did on Eben and Roeper. Like, this is a guy that was not just there to be the straightforward replacement for Gene Siskel and just be like the same person that Siskel was. No, the guy had some balls to have some reviews that would be seen as pretty controversial for the time period. Like, if you go back and listen to some of these reviews, like the one that I always think of when it comes to Richard Roeper's early film reviews was when he did not give a thumbs up to Lord of the Rings: The Fellowship of the Ring. Like, that was the one where everyone went like, "Wait, really? You did not? You're the one person that does not like Lord of the Rings?" But yeah, it was a pretty big deal back then. And in fact, I've actually got that clip right here from that review.
Tolkien's Lord of the Rings books have enchanted tens of millions of readers, but as a movie, The Fellowship of the Ring gets bogged down under the weight of all those mystical speeches and self-consciously quirky characters. You've got 9 members of the Fellowship, dueling wizards, you've got an elf princess played by Liv Tyler, an elf queen played by Cate Blanchett, just too many characters for me to care about. On and on it goes, only to reach an abrupt non-ending straight out of a Saturday afternoon serial.
So you're giving it a thumbs down?
I'm giving it thumbs down.
I mean, that's a face that Roger Ebert gave this face to him. It's just like, are you kidding me? Like I've been getting caught up on old Siskel and Ebert reviews because I'm actually going to do because this year is the 50th anniversary of when Gene and Roger first worked together. So I'm working on a sort of another documentary series coming up in the fall, looking at the history of Siskel and Ebert and Roeper. So I've been watching old episodes of the Siskel and Ebert show, and also getting ready to head into the Ebert and Roeper stuff, because at this time I'm in 1997 right now, so I've got about 2 years left of the Siskel and Ebert run before we get to Ebert and Roeper. But like, it's amazing that, like Roger's reaction to Richard's review of that, like, it reminded me so much of how, Gene and Roger would go at each other for movies that they did not like. I mean, they had a lot of these great moments where, you listen to the person that's saying bad things about a movie that somebody else likes, and you could just tell that something magical was about to happen. Of course, I'm talking about, like, Carnosaur reviews are like Cop and a Half. Benji the Hunted is the classic one, but yeah, this was for somebody to come out and literally badmouth a movie like the first Lord of the Rings movie, like the way he does in this case, like, that took a lot of balls, man. And I give him a lot of credit for going out there and saying that type of stuff, because yeah, that is generally a shocking reaction that somebody would have to the first Lord of the Rings movie.
Giving it thumbs down.
Well, I like it. I think that it indicates a return by Hollywood to the kind of courage that led to great epics like Lawrence of Arabia and the Star Wars trilogy. A really out there kind of large-scale, ambitious undertaking that is too long. I agree with you. It's too long, except for the people who are going to go see it. And they won't find it to be too long. Oddly enough,
well, you know what? Frodo the Hobbit ain't Lawrence of Arabia, first of all, okay?
The people who have your objections to this film are not the kinds of people that will ever go to see it in the first place.
The characters are getting tedious after a while. They go on one adventure after another.
And this
Frodo the Hobbit character who's in this little, elfin world or whatever, and he goes from one place to another, and he's wide-eyed, You think after the 15th beast or the 14th elf or the little sprite that he wouldn't be so amazed by Middle-earth. It's obviously this magical land, and they're all going after this silly little ring that makes people go, ooh, evil stuff.
I would not be completely honest if I didn't say that I can understand where you're coming from. On the other hand, if you're going to start talking about the Lord of the Rings on the grounds that they're going after this silly little ring, then I think you're kind of missing the whole point of the book. And the ring is what sets the entire plot into motion. That's right. I thought it was a visually powerful epic, and I enjoyed it. But I got to say, my enjoyment.
Yeah, most people could probably disagree with what Richard said, but I like the fact that he was so strong in his convictions on that. So, like I said, I give him a lot of credit for basically coming out there and saying these things, even though he's basically wrong on that front, in my personal opinion. But, like, I'm not going to stand there and be like, oh, this guy's a complete monster. And it's just like, no, it's like, this guy clearly that should have been the final nail in the coffin for Richard Roeper, but no. But, I will say this, though. As much as I praised him for going after Lord of the Rings, for Fellowship of the Ring, then 6 months later, he had this to say about Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones.
It's all on a small multiplex screen or with a digital projector. I don't know, but judging from what I saw, Lucas's digital approach isn't able to hold a big screen convincingly.
Well, I thought there was a visual texture to episode 2 that surpasses not only The Phantom Menace, but the first 3 Star Wars films. The blending of human actors, costume creations, elaborate sets, and those digital effects I thought was nearly seamless. This is a great-looking movie with distinct planet environments.
Yeah, was she 10 years older than him or not?
I thought so. But...
Okay, now we disagree about the visuals, so let's put that to one side. There is not one line in this movie that you could quote with any pleasure. It is the most banal script I've ever read. It's just all about exactly what the plot requires them to say at any given moment, and the love story is just dead in the water.
I don't think it's dead in the water at all.
Any chemistry between them, and as for the things that they say, those are ancient, tired, romantic cliches from 1,000 other movies.
Well, this is a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, so maybe they invented these cliches, and then Shakespeare got them from there. First of all, Natalie Portman and Hayden Christensen are great-looking actors, and I think they have a wonderful chemistry together. I like their love scenes together. I don't think they are at all.
They just kind of stare at each other while I love you, but I mustn't love you.
I mean, Roger's basically saying my thoughts on this movie, too. I mean, they don't bring up the whole thing about trade negotiations. That was another thing that I really hated about this movie in general. But the one point I want to get to here is where they talk about the Yoda in this movie, which this Yoda is CG, and they go off on this entire thing, this entire rant. I think let me see if I can get to it.
Take itself as seriously as Phantom Menace does. And I think, you want to go back to the visuals, I think it looks great.
Oh, well, I don't think it looks great. For example, you take Yoda. Now, you like this Yoda better than the other Yoda.
Yeah, and you know what? Go back and look at that other Yoda. First of all, you can practically see the guy crouching underneath.
The other Yoda never looked like a sock puppet. And not only didn't he not look like a sock puppet, but Lucas has said that he tried to make this Yoda look like the Muppet Yoda.
Only more expressive. And there's this whole crouching Yoda, hidden dragon thing.
That Yoda turns into an action figure now with his lightsaber.
I think that is a scene that Star Wars fans are going to absolutely love. I loved it.
Totally out of character
for him. It's not totally out of character for him. That's part of his skills. He's not just this brilliant philosopher. He's also a Jedi warrior.
And you have the Force.
He's a Jedi master.
If you encompass the Force, you don't need no laser saber.
You do when you're going up against another Jedi dude who's also got
you
super
just kind of go like
powers.
This. No, well, you're Yoda. Nobody can stop you.
Well, he was being.
I mean, yeah. That's one of the more fun reviews that I've seen. That's one of the fun reviews I've seen from the Attack of the Clones, and that was one of those ones where it's just like, yeah, as much as I agree with Richard Roeper a lot of the times, and I give him credit for going bold when he needs to, I think he completely missed the boat on Attack of the Clones. But then again, Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel missed the boat on a number of different movies. They were really negative to a lot of movies I remember liking back in the day, but I'm not going to sit there and say that makes them bad movie reviewers. Hey, everyone's allowed to have their opinion. And it would be, I would have loved to see what Gene and Roger, if they were still alive today, would say about the movies of today. They would probably say the same thing they would back then. They would probably not give a lot of great reviews overall, but I mean, I don't know. But yeah, like I said, this is something that I'm working on for another project going forward. But I just wanted to bring this up because of what was happening with Richard Roeper this week over at the Chicago Sun-Times, and it's a big piece of their history going out the door. And it feels like the sad part is that the movie reviewing industry is slowly but surely fading away. A lot of the newspapers are no longer doing it anymore. Lots of it's doing online now. And yeah, that's another one of the big faces out there that I remember when I was getting into this business that is now going off and doing something else entirely. Not going away completely, but that's a big piece of my history, being taken away. But, hey, good on him, man. I mean, good on them for that decision and all that type of stuff. But yeah, overall, yeah, that's something I wanted to bring up here. That was the last big story of the week that I wanted to cover here. Last thing I want to cover in particular is something that I thought was pretty interesting. Something about this movie, and every time that I keep going back to it, I always find something new and interesting about this particular movie that I grew up loving as a kid back in the day. And while I was doing research for another thing this week, I came across a little bit of an interesting history on this specific film I'm about to talk about here. I mean, it always seems like every single time Space Jam gets mentioned, or I think about the movie Space Jam, there's always something out there that I have never put together in my head that this was part of something that happened. Like, apparently I know several people that work on this movie. Like, I know Corey Coleman worked on the movie when he was working at the animation studio when they were making the film. I know somebody that works at Half Price Books at the Half Price Books in Monroeville that worked on the film. Like, I think I know about 2 or 3 people that have worked on this fucking movie, man. It's just just out of pure luck and pure sheer coincidence. Like this movie continues to be a major part of my life more than 30 years after I've seen the damn movie. But it is one of my childhood guilty pleasure favorites. But what I wanted to bring up here was something that I thought was very, very interesting when I looked this movie up, when I was doing some research on another movie in particular, and it was really something that really just kind of came out of nowhere. Like, what basically was happening was I was putting together the compilation sets that I've had for, like, the Time About the Movies episodes from specific months of specific years. Like, if you've been looking on the main channel, you may have noticed that there have been more Time About the Movies Presents coming up, where I take specific months in order. Like, the last one I just completed in 1992 yesterday. I got all those episodes out there, and then tomorrow I'll start in 1993 with the best and worst movies of the year, and so on and so forth. And one of the months in particular was November of 1992, and during that month, Spike Lee had a new movie out called Malcolm X, which was one of my favorite movies of that year. And so I went onto Wikipedia and was just like, I'll go check on here and see if I missed anything important that I need to add into the review or something like that. So I'm doing the research on this, and I come across something where I had no idea that this was even a thing that happened, but Spike Lee was apparently involved in the making of Space Jam at one point. Sort of. I mean, there was it's literally the last part of the budget issues segment of Malcolm X. And it says right here, the last paragraph here, it says, the dissatisfaction Warner's had for how Lee funded the film by completing it with the help of his African-American friends later resulted in Warner Brothers blocking out Lee from participating in the development of Space Jam, as Lee had approached Joe Pytka about polishing the film's script. So supposedly he was part of possibly developing the film in particular, which if you go to the Space Jam Wikipedia page, the development page for this starts off like this. In 1992 and 1993, 2 Super Bowl Nike ads, Air Jordan and Air Space Jordan, respectively aired on television and featured Michael Jordan with the character Bugs Bunny. Whedon and Kennedy, creative director Jim Riswold, conceived the Air Jordan concept following the popularity of advertisements where Jordan played with Mars Blackman, played by Spike Lee, a character from his movie She's Gotta Have It. And of course, Michael Jordan appeared with Spike Lee as Mars Blackman in several of their commercials, and I've got one right here.
Yo, Mars Blackman here, my main man, Michael Jordan, and Professor Douglas Kirkpatrick of the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. Yo, Professor, how does Mike defy gravity? Do you know?
Michael Jordan overcomes the acceleration of gravity by the application of his muscle power in the vertical plane, thus producing a low-altitude Earth orbit.
Oh, what?
Do you know what I mean? Do you know?
Money, check him out.
Yeah, Michael Jordan didn't even say anything. Like, he literally didn't say a damn thing in that commercial, but his presence was very much on screen. But, let's see if I can find another one here.
Yo, Mars Blackman here with my main man, Michael Jordan. Yo, Mike, what makes you the best player in the universe? Is it the vicious stunts?
No, Mars.
Is it the haircut?
No, Mars.
Is it the shoes?
No, Mars.
Is it the extra long shorts?
No, Mars.
It's the shoes then, right?
Nah.
Is it the short socks?
No, Mars.
Money's gotta be the shoes. Shoes. You sure it's not the shoes?
I'm sure, Mars.
What about the shoes?
No, Mars.
Mr. Jordan's opinions do not necessarily reflect those of Nike.
Money's gotta be the shoes.
I'm always fascinated by that setup there because, that was Michael Jordan's Air Jordan shoes. If you ever saw the movie Air, that was the first time I think that a shoe company sold their entire plan of marketing towards one person that they really had a lot of faith in, and it was something where they had to get it right. And lo and behold, that's exactly what they did. They got it right in the big time. But the point I'm trying to make here is that supposedly what had happened was with this commercial was that Spike Lee was interested in helping Joe Pytka with the screenplay for Space Jam, but Warner Brothers blocked him from the project out of dissatisfaction after he funded Malcolm X. And it was it's like something that you don't really think about all that much because it was such a situation where like it could have been something that could have happened. But I've got the article here that actually talks about what is going on, what happened here, and it says here. It says right in the middle. This is from when Space Jam was turning 20 years old. It says, Joe Pytka said this, Spike Lee is a friend of mine, and he would approach me to do a polish on the script, said Pytka. I thought that Spike would have added more stuff that would have been cooler, but Warner Brothers didn't want to deal with him because of their issues with him when they did Malcolm X together. Remember, Spike got his friends to put money into finishing Malcolm X, and the corporation hated the fact that he did that. The lack of involvement by Lee wasn't the only roadblock the director faced. While the NBA player in the film were easy to recruit, others that have failed attempt to bring in 7'7" Romanian center and future My Giant star George Morantz, filling the non-basketball roles proved challenging. So that was really it. Like they wanted to bring Spike Lee in here, but because of what happened with Malcolm X, fortunately, that was never the case, and that was never going to happen, unfortunately. And I think it could have been very interesting to see what Spike Lee would have brought to the table if he had gotten the chance to work on this movie. Like it certainly would have been very, very interesting to see how that movie would have played out if Spike Lee had some involvement in there. But come to think of it, I don't think he's done. Has he done another movie since Warner Brothers since then? I guess if we're including New Line Cinema, which is a part of Warner Brothers, Bamboozled was one film that he did with them. I think that's it. I could be wrong on that, but I think Bamboozled was the only one that he did, which that's not one of his better movies in general. But but I just think it's kind of interesting the fact that Spike Lee made Malcolm X with all these different people that he knew, like notable names like Bill Cosby, Oprah Winfrey. I think was another one of the people that was involved in here. Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Janet Jackson, Prince, some big names that contributed to the making of this movie, and apparently it went against what Warner Brothers wanted to do on that film, and so they were really peeved about that, and maybe that's why they didn't necessarily made a big push for that film to become an Oscar contender in general. But that's a shame because the movie was friggin' amazing, and Denzel Washington is pitch perfect as Malcolm X in that movie. I mean, he did get nominated for that as well as costume design, but that really was a film that should have been a Best Picture contender that year. I feel like that's a movie that should have gotten more recognition at the Oscars, but it's still a great movie regardless. A really, really terrific film in general. But it is just another one of those. Imagine what would have happened if he had gotten the chance to work on this property with one of those type of stories. Because I think Spike Lee's involvement in Space Jam would have been very, very interesting to see what he would have contributed to a film like this. But again, you learn something new about something you love every single day. Like, I didn't realize for the longest time that supposedly the referee of the game in Space Jam was originally going to be Mickey Mouse, and it was supposed to be that way because they thought because of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, that meant that Warner Brothers was allowed to use Disney characters and Disney was allowed to use Warner Brothers characters, but apparently that was never the case, and so Mickey Mouse was going to be the referee instead of Marvin the Martian in that movie. But I mean, it's very, very interesting. All the stuff that I keep hearing about this one movie from my childhood that is not a great movie by any means necessary, but it was one of those movies that just came out at the right time for me. I was a Michael Jordan fan back in the day. Still am a Michael Jordan fan. Of course, I'm a Looney Tunes fan. I was growing up with those two in my life. It was the perfect timing for this. I mean, that was the first movie I really got excited to see when that was coming out. Like, I had to beg my parents to take me on the first day to see that movie. Like, I really wanted to see that movie opening day. Like, I was that excited for it. That was the first movie I ever saw in a theater that I got super excited for. That movie, Space Jam. Yeah, like I said, you learn something new every single day with anything. And Space Jam, there's probably a lot more things about Space Jam that I will continue to learn about going forward from this point in time. So this may not even be the last thing that I take from Space Jam in the future. But But I found that kind of interesting. I wanted to bring that up per se. Apparently, that was a story that was out there for a long period of time, and maybe the reason why I never saw it was mostly because of the fact that the film is that it's such a small part of a longer story about the 20-year history of Space Jam. Maybe that's the case of why I never really learned about it until now. But so anyway, that's that story in particular. So with that said, let us go ahead and move on to some recommendations, and then we can go ahead and wrap this up. So in terms of big new releases in particular, there's a couple of notable ones here. One of the big ones is The Brutalist, the new film from Adrian Brody, which of course won him the Oscar for Best Actor. Heard a lot of great things about it. It's a movie I've yet to check out yet, but I really am very curious to check it out. So hopefully if I can find it at a reasonable price, I'll definitely pick it up this week in stores, and or not even then. When it comes out, I can find it at a reasonable price, I'll definitely get my hands on that. Star Trek Lower Decks, the complete series, comes out on Blu-ray this week. The entire series. Really good show that was on Paramount Plus. Star Trek adult animated comedy series that might be my favorite thing from Star Trek to come out of the Star Trek canon since Paramount Plus took over the series in general. But in addition to that, we have Mary and Max and Memoir of a Snail coming out on Blu-ray this week in the 2-film collection from Shout Factory. Catalog titles, the two biggest ones, Tommy Boy is coming out on 4K, and Black Sheep is coming out on 4K as well. So those are ones I'm definitely looking forward to get my hands on in the not too distant future. I think I have Tommy Boy coming in the mail for me this week. I've got the Walmart Steelbook for that, and then I also have, and then I'm hoping to get Black Sheep pretty soon too. That one's coming out from Kino Lorber, while Tommy Boy's coming out from Paramount, But other than that, though, not much else is coming out here in terms of new releases I'm looking forward to. I think the big ones for me are Tommy Boy and Black Sheep, Star Trek Lower Decks, and The Brutalist. So those are ones I'm definitely looking forward to get my hands on in the next couple of weeks and months. But with all of that said, that's going to wrap up this edition of the Reviewing Network Live. And thank you guys so much for watching and listening. I hope you enjoyed this. I enjoyed making this. And I hope you enjoyed these videos. If you did, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button. Check out the last episode I did, and also the other episodes I've done on the cards that you're going to see here in just a few seconds. But yeah, with all that said, I am heading off, and I will see you guys next week for another episode of the Reviewing Network Live here every Sunday night. So with all that said, thank you so much for watching and listening, and I'll see you guys next time. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time, and until then, we are out.